Morning and welcome to another week after a weekend of storms. Although, how sad that Saturday was complete from morning to night, rain and water for the bonfire people, and then Sunday was absolutely gorgeous for the church people. Did you go to church, Richard?
No. It's, you know that if I were to enter a church, the devil will rip out of my stomach and go on the rampage. So it's probably best that I
don't. How are you?
I'm okay. I've got a pretty bad cough. And I think what happened is members of my family came home, including my youngest, who has just started university. And I recall when I was a student that it was known as freshers' flu, because it's all these students arriving at the same place from different corners of the country. And they personally may have set up herd immunity within their families, wherever they're from. But that doesn't necessarily apply to other people. So she came home with this hacking cough. And the rest of us have got it now. So,
yeah. Those bugs love a confined space, don't they?
Oh, yes. And, you know, when they're just starting at university, they are going to be all, you know, in a junior common room or something like that.
Yeah.
All the bar. So I have felt better, I've got to say.
Yeah. I'm feeling a little. I mean, not having had anything to drink yesterday, or at least a very small glass of wine. I'm feeling a bit as if I'm hungover this morning, but I don't have a cough or a sniffle. But I think that it's that time of year, particularly when the weather changes, that the bugs come out and they attack in force.
Oh yes. Presumably, Keith, you can just pop down to the church and quaff a pint of communion wine.
Indeed, I always thought of that as my first drink of the Sunday, before popping over the road to the brewers. Although now I only go to church about once every other third Sunday, and because the Black Horse is far closer.
Yes. Yeah, I can see that. I had a friend whose father was a happy clappy vicar.
Oh God!
And their tradition was when they had communion wine, that if there was any left over, it was up to the vicar to dispose of it, the blood of Christ, and typically dispose of it by drinking it. And my friend said his dad came home looking shamefaced because the church had invited guests along from another church who didn't have this tradition. And so they were just looking at him thinking, this man's a complete dipsomaniac. He's knocking a pint of red wine down. And I think he ended up explaining to them the theological reasoning behind it.
Is one vicar ago, is a fairly young very active and very with it priest, of course, we call them at St. Michael's. And we had wine to drink. I mean, we set up a bar after church, and I was appointed to look after the bar, as you expect I might be with my particular skills, and I was known as barman to the Lord.
That's the fox in the chicken coop, isn't it? Really?
Absolutely. What have you got on your mind this morning? I expect Philip, of course, is away today. In fact, is he with his family?
No, I think he's coming along.
Ah, right. It hasn't appeared yet. Let me just.
He is saying that he's texted you because he doesn't have a link.
Ah, right. Okay, I shall resend it to him. Ask him if he's checked his spam, because he sometimes doesn't, and he's a naughty boy that way.
Yes.
It's gone to him again.
So it's been sent to you twice, and Keith was just wondering whether you checked your spam. Okay. Right.
You see, the high tech goes on here on air. We show you just how high tech we are.
Let me just put you on loudspeaker, Phil. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Richard. Yes.
And I'm going to hold you up in front of the screen so you can repeat that email addressed to Keith.
Right.
Go ahead.
My surname, lowercase, MEREDITH, then the numbers 828 at btinternet.com, COM.
Right. Okay. Well, now, luckily, I've got a bag of pens here.
Are you ready to take a note of it?
I better take a note of it, hadn't I?
Are you asking me or Keith that?
I'm asking Keith, so if you wouldn't mind.
Can you repeat that now, please?
I can text it to him.
All right.
No, I'll have difficulty because I'll have to go away from the screen. We stay here. I'm not sure that you repeat it.
I can assure you, my Wi-Fi is well up to speed. I've got a new iPad and my emails are all working.
Okay, well,
right, okay.
So I have no idea why this is.
Right, just repeat this.
In the past.
No, okay.
Email to me. He's not hearing me, Richard. Can you ask him to? I think the best thing is for him to give it to you and you give it to me, because.
Are you able to send me a test email from you, Richard?
Yes, I can.
In case it is me.
Just give me a moment.
Presumably you've got my email address.
It all happens at Mirador on a Monday morning. Everybody gets a headache, including the system.
Let me have a look, Phil.
You may not, because it's my personal email address.
I'll start to sing viewers. I'll start to sing the Tribune News.
Yes, so Meredith828 at btinternet.com.
That's it, pal, yeah.
Okay. Keith.
More importantly, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm okay. I was just saying to Keith
Meredith 828.
at btinternet.com.
Okay, well, you two keep chatting, and I'll see if I can get it on that one.
Yes, in case it's me or not.
No, he'll send one through to you. It'll be fine. I was explaining to Keith that Phil, can you hear me, Phil? No, you can't.
Sorry, it cut off for some reason.
Yeah, don't worry. No, I was explaining to Keith that I had my family home, including the youngest one who's just started university.
In York.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she just turned up with this terrible hacking cough.
Oh dear.
And we've now all got it inevitably.
Okay, it's gone again.
Yes, so the last thing you need, bloody hell,
Yeah.
is a fucking chest infection.
Yeah.
So everybody, you know the state of health of all of us.
When they're at primary school,
Yes.
they go to uni and they come back with all sorts of shit.
Yes. It's
Philip, you're on air.
Philip. People can hear you. Yes, I've got you on speakerphone next to the laptop where I can see Keith and myself, and so other people will be able to see us. So I think moderating your language a little bit might be of use.
Okay, headmaster. I didn't have any. I thought the only person who could hear me was you.
No.
Who else is hearing me?
Everybody.
Sorry to be awkward, but I don't understand who else is hearing me.
Well, the audience.
But I'm not on the. Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
They're live.
Yes.
Nice to know that.
So I was saying to Keith that when I was at college, it was always called freshers' flu because, you just got it when you started at university.
Yeah.
And I remember in my year when we started, it was about 2/3 of the people in my year who ended up trotting off to the GP, who was a very miserable man, it has to be said.
Well, it's like running a prison, isn't it?
Well, he just ran a practice, and students from my college were part of his roster. But why he did it? Because he hated students. But thinking it through, he get paid for every student, obviously, because they're a patient of his. And once you get past that initial flu, students tend to be a relatively healthy bunch. So he didn't really have to do very much apart from occasionally dole out the pill. And so I would have thought he saw it as a nice way to augment his general practice with the citizens of North Oxford.
I think you better fly solo, Rich, because nothing's coming through, and I fail to understand why this happens. I know he's had to move venue and all that, but
Have you sent it, Keith?
Yes, I've sent it 3 times now.
Right. Okie doke.
he has he?
Yeah, 3 times.
Well, this is a great shame, but I don't know what to do, really. My emails are working fine. You could send me a test email. How long would that take you? Then if yours doesn't come through, then there's something wrong.
What? Remind me of the number. I've got the rest of it. It's just the number.
828.
Got it. Yeah.
Internet.com.
Yeah.
All lowercase. MERED.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it stored. I sent it on the same one that I always do, but I just double checked, and in fact, that was the email that Philip has provided.
There you go, Philip. I've forwarded you
The link.
the link.
Yep, that's come through.
Right. Well, click on the link there.
I will do.
There's obviously my email doesn't like his, so I'll send it on a different email in the future.
I'm sure it'll be worth the wait. See, happy-go-lucky Phil.
There we are.
As if by magic.
As if by magic.
Yeah, but there's no magic, Keith, because Richard forwarded me the link. You mustn't have my correct email address. That's all I can think.
It's the same one that I always use. But sometimes systems don't like one another. What I'll do next time is I'll send it on a different email.
From you mean?
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get on with it. I'm sorry about the problem.
No, it's all right. I'm sure that actually one of the things about this type of television is people love to see other people's problems. Okay, what have you got up your sleeves this morning?
What would you like to talk about, Phil?
Well, you suggested a subject close to the heart of the three of us, which is alcohol.
We can save that for another day.
Well, my other suggestion was to share. You both experienced bonfire,
Yeah.
which would interest me, and I had a weekend wherein my son, and this is not why I'm mentioning it, I went to see his graduation, which was at the Guildhall in London, a place I'd never ever visited apart from the old magistrates course that used to be in the bowels.
Yeah.
And just irrespective of the award, of the degree, what a magnificent occasion it was. No, bonfire came to mind again for 2 reasons. Firstly, you may have seen on the news this morning that they had dreadful trouble in Edinburgh and Glasgow.
Yes.
And Dundee, but predominantly in Edinburgh, with youths encouraged by adults. So, bonfire night in Scotland meant riot police, which I found very sad more than anything.
Well, they were throwing Molotov cocktails at the police.
They were, and they were throwing bricks at police cars. Apparently it's an ongoing problem. They set up an operator. You and I know, Richard, that the police always give these operations a name, and because they had trouble last year, but on a far lesser scale, they introduced Operation Moonbeam. So everybody was on the ready, but I don't think they expected the scale of it. And fire engines and ambulances were attacked as well. It beggars belief, actually. I just really don't understand it. It's so, with Keith here, I will have to say, it reminded me of Northern Ireland. Why on earth would they want to do that? I mean, even the images I saw on the website, it didn't look a particularly awful area. The housing looked okay. But also, by sheer chance, I found a fairly old article on Lewis and the history of the bonfires, and it confirmed what Keith told us, and you already knew, Richard, which I didn't. Because in some of the parades years ago, I don't know whether it happened this year, but there is part of the procession that carries wooden crosses, at least 3 wooden crosses, almost like Calvary. And the article reminded me of what Keith told me in your company, that the bonfires obviously began in memory of the 17 martyrs.
Yes.
And the first time an effigy of the Pope was burned was, it was the Pope who had been elected just before November the 5th in a particular year. I think Pius the 5th or something.
I think it was Paul.
And there we are. So I saw on the news, I saw the effigies. I thought the HS2 one was very funny, and so on. But so, Richard, it interests me what your bonfire experience was like this year.
Well, I just didn't go to the house. It holds no interest for me at all.
So Henry VIII and his 6 wives didn't turn up this year, then?
They didn't come and seek to use the downstairs lavatory, no, which was a blessing.
Did any of your family go out?
No.
Because your youngest came back from York, where she's an undergraduate, didn't she?
Yeah.
And brought you all back a present.
A cough.
Yeah. So on top of you not being tickety-boo anyway, you all now have Kitty's cough.
Absolutely right. No, just changing the subject slightly there, Keith. The Scottish trouble. It's not clear to me whether that's as a sectarian basis. But I'd be interested to know what, if anything, happens in Northern Ireland about the bonfire.
Nothing.
No, I didn't think.
It's they don't consider it as any sort of celebration of anything. I mean, you've got the odd person who's a Brit who may sort of do something, but of course, for most of the time that I was there, fireworks were forbidden. Mm-hmm. You couldn't buy them privately. They did have sort of communal bonfires, one thing or another. But of course, the big day in Northern Ireland is the 12th, and then there is trouble, particularly since the prods, excuse me, using the common parlance of the local parlance, the prods insist that they must follow a certain route, and that route takes them through the Catholic areas. and so they're flashpoints. The police know that they're flashpoints and do their best to cover them, but even so, people start scuffling. What can you do? But in recent years, there hasn't been any major breakout of trouble. But in past years, of course, as they burned fire engines and taxis and all sorts of things.
Is the 12th the Battle of the Boyne?
Yeah.
Right. So it's
One,
all about King Billy.
Yeah. One amusing thing is in my first venture into Northern Ireland was when I was still in Canada in 1970. And the Troubles had only just started. And so I was dispatched to take a look and see what it was all about. So I was in Belfast, and I'd been in Dublin first, and the reporters there had said, find a Catholic taxi driver that you feel you can trust, and then get him to drive you around, which I did. So I was taken into the Short Strand and all sorts of places that normally would be difficult to get into. The Short Strand is one street that abuts onto a big Catholic area in the Newtonards Road. And the taxi driver took me into his home and introduced me to his family and so on. And they told me a couple of stories. And they put the bumps in the road to deter drive-by shootings. Nobody told the prods in the Newtonards Road. So they all got drunk one Friday night and took off and thought that they would go and terrorize the Short Strand, came hurtling down the road, hit the bumps. Apparently it was like the Keystone Cops. The cars fell apart. He said he wished he could have possibly filmed it.
Well, serves them right, frankly. So a fairly in-house experience, Richard.
Yes, well,
with nobody calling in.
Yeah, the weather wasn't great anyway.
No.
So even though it's a Saturday night, which often has more people out and about, I think a lot of people would have been deterred by the weather. I don't know what.
Yeah, well, they still reported thousands and thousands of people managing to get into Lewes, but whether that's true, I don't know. Certainly, some of the pictures I saw, the pavements were pretty packed.
Yes.
But there again, they're not overly wide, are they?
No. Well, you get some awful bits like the bottleneck, where people are just squashed up together.
Yeah, which is basically dangerous.
Yes, quite.
I mean, had Keith been on the Red Devil, he could have scored so many points.
Oh, it would have been like a game of Skittles.
Yeah.
It would indeed.
Particularly on sports mode.
Yeah. Keith, did you go out for bonfire, Keith?
No, I did not. I went down to my little store, which is no more than about half a mile away, on the Red Devil, and got some sweets and things, and came back. And I actually ended up working. There were a few things that had to be done for Mirador, and I didn't. I looked outside at the lights and the grounds of my apartment block, and I thought, isn't that strange? You know, there are thousands of people packed in no more than half a mile away, and I can't hear a thing. You wouldn't know anything was going on. And it wasn't until they actually had all obviously got to their bonfire sites and let off all their firework displays that I could hear them. But yeah, I mean, when did I first come? 1990. So I've been to a fair few, and you know, we had this discussion a week or two ago whether we would go or not, and I thought, you know, in some ways it's much of a muchness, apart from the effigies, which are always good fun. But you know, fireworks are fireworks, and the I love fireworks, but I mean, there are many occasions during the year that you can enjoy them, and also the costumes don't change. So I didn't figure that perhaps I was missing much this year.
And presumably, Phil, because you were in London, you didn't experience any fireworks.
On the Friday night, there were fireworks in the distance. We were staying in the city at a type of establishment you and Jed know very well called a travel lodge.
Yes.
Which I have to say was surprisingly comfortable and had a very, very nice downstairs lounge and bar. The bar remained open till 0400. Which I found extraordinary. So from 10 o'clock, you have to use your key card to get into the building per se. But once you are in as a resident, and of course I didn't do this, you can drink till 0400. Yeah, the majority of the staff were perfectly pleasant. And we were very comfortable there. I have to say that I hadn't been to the city for quite some time, and even on the Friday, particularly the Saturday, it was just a desert. I mean, it was very few people, pouring with rain on the Saturday, because the ceremony had been on the Friday afternoon and evening. Obviously buses, very few taxis, and the ones that did come along wouldn't stop. Very strange, very vacant area. But like I say, the real experience was, yes, the ceremony, which they did extremely well. And they did really nice, after the event, nibbles and bubbles, which I thoroughly enjoyed because they had some very nice red wine on offer. And Jackie thoroughly enjoyed because she likes cheese straws and decent champagne. So they really did put a show on, but the building, which is my main reason for mentioning it, the building was eye-opening. I don't know whether either of you have ever been inside the Guildhall.
No.
Well, the main hall where the ceremony took place, part of it reminded me of the Inns of Court, Richard, because it's the Guildhall, as you can imagine, the walls and part of the ceiling are just covered with the arms, the coats of arms, shields of every guild.
Gosh,
and that's
right.
fascinating in itself, but they've added to that. I mean, there is a huge, bang in the middle of the hall, I mean, against the wall, I don't mean literally in the centre, but there's this enormous memorial to the Duke of Wellington. And believe me, it is stunning. It's him in all his finery, sitting on a plinth, surrounded by his acolytes, and you know they're like those sort of Grecian type, neo-Grecian things, and they're all sort of looking at him as if they're worshipping him. But it just is extraordinary. And there are other features in the decor and other statues and so on. So it was a bit of a wow, I have to say. And the rest of the building, which is huge, like I say, we then went into an area that they call the library, although there wasn't a book in sight. Where, as I say, we had a lovely time having a drink and a bite to eat. The shame was that Oliver, my son, because he just plays venues and gigs and teaches all the time to earn a living, he had decided to accept a request made that afternoon to go to the Windmill in Brixton and play electric bass with a band down there by invitation. So we were really up against it in terms of time to get him changed back at the Travel Lodge, and then he went off to do the gig because he left all his kits in our room. So we could have spent longer at the Guildhall, but very impressive. Very impressive.
Guildhall.
I'll tell you what, Richard, as a graduation ceremony and the behaviour of the students, it wasn't like mine. I don't know how well behaved you lot were, but this lot, particularly the actors. So it was the musician graduates and the drama graduates, and God, the stuff they turned up in, and the noise they made. I mean, even the compere, as I would call him, the MC, after it all finished, he just said, and the audience laughed because he just said, "Those actors are very different to the musicians, aren't they?" Because they were whooping like some Native American tribe. It was just extraordinary. Anyway, that was all part of parcel. And as I messaged you, it was very, very inclusive and multicultural. Very.
Tell me this, Phil. Is the Guildhall open to the public more generally?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, quite limited times, but I did see a sign at the entrance. It's not every day of the week, and I think from recollection it's mid-morning to mid-afternoon, but I may have misremembered that, but it is open, yes. And of course they have their own staff, not so much in uniform, but in like a grey liveried gown and tunic, who were also very helpful. But yes, it is open. It is open, and what the hall would look like without us lot in it, I don't know. But something they did really well was there's a balcony at the back, rather like a Tudor theatre. And on that balcony, they assembled a band. And we were welcomed in to various nice tunes. And at the end, the master party, including the sheriff of the City of London, who made the presentations, they all traipsed off to the sound of various anthems and tunes. And then we, the guests, so-called, we were drummed off. There were these 3 drummers with these huge, tall, like African-style drums, and that was great. That was very entertaining. So yeah, that was our experience at the Guildhall. My son chose to wear a shirt that was completely too small for him. He couldn't even do the collar up because it was too tight, and he wasn't wearing a tie. But there again, there were others who were dressed, particularly the drama people, who were dressed in an extraordinary way. I mean, one of them looked like Doctor Who and didn't have a gown or a mortarboard. So it was quite an experience, really. And prior to that, I saw another area of London that in my day I would never have gone near, which was the Shoreditch High Street. Because we arrived at London Bridge, and the idea was to go to part of a restaurant chain we really like, called Dishoom, which is very authentic Mumbai type meals and decor. And so it was the 149 bus from London Bridge to the Shoreditch High Street. We got off at the wrong stop, inevitably. And then this might amuse you, Richard. Jackie and I went to the wrong restaurant. So I found Boundary Street, which wasn't easy, which is like a tandem street off the high street.
Yes.
Through what is called Boundary Passage. But there's another sign that's been put up informing, I don't mean graffiti, but it's this classic dark, even in the daylight, it was fairly dark passageway. So it said Boundary Passage, and under which was a different sign that said, forgive the language, it said rude apiss. So it's obviously a passageway that's used for people to relieve themselves in private. So we went through the passage, saw the restaurant, what we thought was Dishoom ahead, went in there, said, I've got booked a table for 6. Here's your table for 6, sat down, began to order drinks. And Jackie was looking at the menu and she said, Phil, is this the right restaurant? And I looked at the menu and it said Boundary. So we sat in the wrong restaurant for 10 minutes. Thankfully, they hadn't done the drinks and were very understanding, but Dishoom was across the road. So that was a bit amusing to others, but there we are.
Country mouse goes to town.
Well, quite. Quite. I mean, I don't really enjoy going up there much. You know this, Richard, from our conversations. I don't really enjoy it. But yeah, the train journeys weren't too bad. It reminded me of the usual sort of, you get to a certain station. In this instance, it was Billingshurst, which has no ticket office or any sort of security at all. And inevitably, on get the local yobs, energy drinks in their hand. And you just know instinctively, don't you, Richard? They haven't got tickets.
Cool.
And they go past you, effing and blinding, and they go right down the end of the train to the first class. And they spend their entire journey just looking back to see if the conductor's going to come down. But there we are.
So that's
we got back.
Phil's diatribe against the youth of today.
I'm sure
yobs.
fare dodging has been happening for as long as I've travelled on trains, Richard.
Well, of course, and it was a lot easier before there were barriers at most stations.
Oh, hugely. But on this somewhat tangential, you go to Guildford, Crown Court, you use the train, so you will know that there is an aerial passageway that goes over the platforms from one end of the station to the other. Well, I read on the local news the other day that they are now closing that. They can't close it for good because they have to get a particular kind of order from the council. But they've been given a temporary closure order because it encourages fare evasion. And when staff challenge these people, they get assaulted.
And that's in Guildford, for heaven's sake.
Say again, Richard.
That's in Guildford.
That's in Guildford, yeah.
Extraordinary.
Well, all of these towns have what we might call dodgy areas.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily follow that someone from a dodgy area is going to be the archetypal fare dodger. It's just to save money because they know they're not going to get caught,
Yes.
But even those youths that I mentioned at Billingshurst, Jackie and I got off at Horsham because we've realised that there is just as from Brighton, you can get to wherever it is on the Thameslink. The Thameslink goes everywhere. not just
Yeah.
to Bedford, it goes to Peterborough and Cambridge. Well, the one to Peterborough leaves from Horsham, and so it avoids messing around at Three Bridges. It's a very easy change, and you're on a very nice train. And at Gatwick, as I planned or I gambled on, nobody got on. Everybody gets on the Victoria services, and it's absolute mayhem when you get into Gatwick on the southern trains. Absolute mayhem. So that was nice, because straight to London Bridge, you see, absolute doddle.
Yeah.
So so then we came back yesterday, and as I may have mentioned, Richard, by sheer good fortune, Oliver had picked up a function to play at, which happened to be at Arundel Town Hall. So we came back in the most foul weather. I mean, the weather was these bursts of horrendous rain, to the extent that on the approach to Arundel in the train, you couldn't see out of the windows. It was that torrential. And then suddenly it would stop until the next cloud burst. Extraordinary, really. So Ollie played on the Saturday night at the Town Hall, and then went back yesterday because he works as a barman at a place called the Roundhouse, which is another music venue, so it's good for his contacts there. So there we are, Man and His Dog. That's the very interesting Meredithian weekend for you. And I was delighted to get home and get into my own bed again, because I just don't like being away. I know it's pathetic, but I don't like being away.
Was your Travelodge near St Catherine's Dock?
Sorry, Keith, say again.
Was your Travelodge near St Catherine's Dock?
No, it was on the City Road.
Ah.
It's called City Central Travelodge, and I can recommend it. I mean, the funniest aspect to it, I mentioned the staff. The reception staff were delightful. The security staff were delightful. The barman, in the evening, because we did stay for a drink in the bar, was very professional, very patient, because the place actually was full of tourists. It wasn't, there weren't Brits. There was all nationalities. Anyway, on the Saturday morning, we hadn't booked breakfast because you didn't have a choice. You paid a flat fee of like 11 quid each, and it was eat as much as you want. Well, didn't bother with that. So I went down to investigate, to see if I could get a decent cup of coffee and something from the snack machines for Jackie, just to keep her going. Because unlike me, she does breakfast. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The chap who was in charge of the breakfast admissions had this massive list in front of him. Now, he was a very, very big man, and a man of colour. And he was one of the rudest people I think I've ever seen in public service, because he was bad enough to those who spoke English. They would approach him, and I watched in fascination. They would approach him, and he had his pen in his hand, and he was leaning over his list, and he'd look up and go, "Name?" And they would go like that, and they'd give him his name. No, name. And this is with people who spoke English. Right, how many? 3. No, it says 4 here. No, it's 3. Okay, go through. And it was every single bloody breakfast party had to put up with it. And the ones who didn't speak English, he was even ruder. What? Name. What? And they. Anyway, there we are. So he was an exception. Everybody else was very nice.
Yes, for you to be describing somebody as miserable, Philip,
No, I didn't
is
say miserable, Richard, did I? I just didn't think he was very nice to the customers. You wouldn't have liked being treated like that, would you?
no, I'm sure.
You and your 3 daughters. Hello.
Well,
Good morning.
I was thinking
Name?
more. I was thinking more that
Barton.
if he,
Barton.
I would have thought, Philip, that if he tried to behave like that towards me, I've got a 4-legged friend who would make it clear that that's not going to work.
Yes, I would have liked to have seen him cope with Jed. He wouldn't have coped.
No.
But he was. I mean, I have various theories. Either he had some sort of special needs or disability and he was being employed as part of a scheme, or he just didn't like what it. I mean, I felt like going up to him as an observer and saying, "Do you enjoy your job, sir?" But I thought if I said that, he might get pretty stroppy. But now, Richard, you simply are not very well this morning, are you?
No, I've just got this. It's just really a cough, and it's irritating because it disturbs my sleep, as these things do.
Well, maybe we should call it a day now and get you some rest.
Yep, I'm happy with that.
Because I have sort of run out of things to bore everybody with.
Yes, well,
Unless,
I think
Keith, you have any ideas?
No, I was fascinated by your description. I will say I've not been into Guildhall, but when I was with Reuters, I spent a fair amount of time in that area, and I was in Mansion House.
Now, Mansion House. Now, Mansion House. Now you're talking, yes. I was taken to the Mansion House by my now deceased father-in-law, as he was a guest and I was his guest. Again, at one of the guilds, one of the big dinners they have there. Because I don't think they have the dinners at the guild hall. They use the Mansion House. So I have been to the Mansion House. And again, it's reminding me, there used to be a magistrate's court next to the Mansion House.
Yeah.
Because I've now got, it's rather like you say, Keith, that something Barton or I say triggers a memory in you. Well, I'm now picturing myself in this rather smart, very unmagistrate's court type courthouse years ago, where they did a lot of white collar fraud cases, inevitably. But no, the Mansion House, I remember fondly, I have to say. How about you, Richard? Have you been to the Mansion House?
No. The guilds slightly trouble me.
Yeah, you don't like these sort of quasi-secret societies, do you?
Yeah, and you know, you can be a member of the Guild of Fruiterers, but never picked up a banana in anger. It's just an excuse to have a society. And actually, no, I have been to the Mansion House because there was a chap in our chambers years ago who retired, and because he was a member of one of the guilds, he had his retirement dinner there. So I went along to that.
Well, because my grammar school was founded by a goldsmith called Sir Edmund Shah, my school used to have reunions for all years, once in a while, at the Goldsmiths Hall in London, which is actually very near the Old Bailey. And that was their own Smiths Guild Hall, the Goldsmiths Company. And that was interesting. But I take your point.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
interesting
well-
little place. I don't know whether you've ever been. Is just around the corner at the back of the Bank of England. There is a little museum which takes you through the development of currency,
Yes.
and that's quite fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah, well, on the number of bus journeys I did, I must have gone past that because we went straight past the Bank of England. And I never realised that the gates of the Bank of England have these huge, I don't know what you call them. They're not a statue because they're fixed or engraved into the metal itself, but it's like a lion holding a huge key. And there's one on each door. Fascinating. You do see a lot more on a bus, I have to say. You do see a lot more.
Yes.
But
The underground is very efficient, but it's just getting from point A to point B.
yeah, well, actually, the every journey we did, the bus was the better option. The bus was the better option because the tubes didn't really satisfy. Wrong word. Didn't really accommodate the routes or the destinations we were looking for. But yes, an experience anyway. Well, Richard, I do hope you get a siesta of some kind, and
I definitely intend to. And I'm sure I'll be on the mend quite soon.
well, you are arguably one of the most stoical people I've ever met, and you always say that. But do look after yourself, and hopefully see you Friday. Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, Keith.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Keith.
Incidentally, just for the information of the two of you, just while we're sorting out our change of venue, is we will actually be broadcasting from the Black Horse pub on Friday. So I'm sure that might spur Richard to regain a certain amount of health.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that. Is that just temporary or?
Well, we're not sure yet. Declan and I are meeting on Thursday to suss out some of the bits and pieces of technology, but if they all work, it could easily be.
I'd be delighted because you may remember I did actually suggest that myself as a very appropriate venue for both of you.
Absolutely. The pub landlord, a chap called Declan, is just absolutely delightful. But when we talked about it initially, he talked about a back room. And then when we were having a drink and a chat about it yesterday, he said, these are the PowerPoints and so on. Could you do it from the window? I said, could we do it from the window? We love being on display. So the window, the Black Horse pub it is.
Oh, that'll be wonderful. I'd be delighted if you get that slot, Keith.
You're actually coming to Lewes for a show?
I would happily come to the Black Horse. Look, Richard, get some sleep, mate. Get yourself better.
I'm off.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, there we are. A trip to London. It evoked some memories for me. It evoked some memories for you. The good, the bad, and the in between. We'll be back in a few minutes, and then we have Harry Anderson from France, as usual. So for the moment, because of the change of venue, you can see my picture is rather dark this morning. I have to see what I can do about that. But we'll be back shortly. Bye.